society is particularly cruel to aging women. It is so cruel in a way of a decrease in value without the possibility of an increase, which is very different from men. Dad bods versus mom bods. And we're like, wait a minute, there's only one of us that have had to bear the physical burden of bearing children. So why is it that we have one that is kind of like glamorized and the other one that is shamed? Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Rachel. I just remembered I forgot
You forgot your lip slap?
I don't want to have dry lips.
Let me tell you guys this one thing. So, Rachel and I get on, we start chatting, and then we're like, we should turn on the mics. Because we say all of our funny things that we want to tell each other before, but actually I kept this one, so I'll tell you. So I call chapstick or any kind of lip gloss, lip slap, and I do it so frequently that when you use a word over and over, you don't realize that other people have no idea what you're talking about because it's common language for you. So I went into Sephora and I was looking for a lip gloss.
I'm already embarrassed for you.
I'm so embarrassed. And I had this young man who was helping me find my different things because I need some sunscreen first that would be good for not oily, it was face sunscreen, whatever. And he's like, oh, do you need anything else? And I was like, I just need a good lip slap. Dead in the face, I told the man that I needed a lip slap. And he just looked at me and was like, you need a what?
He was like, is this an S&M pickup line?
Dead in the face, I need a good lip slap. What do you recommend?
Whips, chains, what do you like? Do you not have this at Sephora? What's going on?
You should have seen his face. And he was a younger boy. He was in his young 20s, whatever that means, but early 20s. And he just is staring at me unsure which road he was going to take from there.
Well, here's the thing. Sometimes when that happens with younger people, I'm like, oh, it's clearly that I don't understand what's the vernacular I've missed. But you were out-aging him. So he clearly was like, no, this can't be one of those things. I know everything. I'm in my early 20s.
I know everything.
If people were calling it that, I would know.
And the thing is about that is I very much make up words and sayings and I just start using them, and people that are around me will just kind of be like, well, okay, they just
I have one. Well, it's not mine, it's Rory's, but I do this the same, I'll say it to other people and they'll be like, well, here's the thing about kids too, is sometimes when they're learning words and they're, they don't have the full vocabulary for all the things that they want to say. They make up these words that are 2,000% better than the word that it actually is.
Yeah.
They're just using the words they have to describe the thing that they want to describe. And it's why don't we call it that? That is, yeah. Let's all just change. So Rory has a bunch of these, but the one that really has stuck is that whenever we travel, he has a rolling suitcase. I can't even say suitcase because it doesn't even sound right to me.
No.
Since he was little, he has called it a roll castle. I don't know.
Which makes so much more sense than a suitcase, first of all. We need to evolve our words. It is a roll castle.
Well, it's a suitcase for traveling businessmen that are storing their suits. But obviously that doesn't make sense anymore. But he called it a roll castle. And we all just kind of stuck with it. And now at the airport, I'm like, okay, like put your roll castle up onto the scanner thing and come on, get your roll castle. And people will be looking and being like, what in the world is this lady talking about? And I'll say, like, to airport security, like, yeah, no, that's my son's roll castle. And then I'll be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Oh my
So
god, oh my god. No, it's and like when you're around that and a word like that makes so much more sense. Like I've used it so often that like you could see my suitcase in the back of one of my meetings. It was holding my door shut, and Isley said like, "Oh, I can see your roll castle." It's
it's
like
catching
Rory made
on.
up a word that is now spidered out.
It's catching on. It's
Like
catching
if guys
fire.
in 10 if you see a suitcase being sold and it's being sold as a roll castle, we just have to come back to this moment and be like, Rory invented that. It
He
just
said it
spidered
first.
off so much that now we're selling roll castles because that should have been the word all along. And we didn't intend for this to be a really good segue into the topic that we're going to discuss today, but like if you look around, things that don't make sense are in like this, just like the way that they've been and the language that's been built around it is just like once you pause and say, like, does that actually make sense? Is that working for me? Is this like how, if going back to the beginning of time, I would have designed it for myself in my life? And if the answer to that is no, we really need to take a hard pause on that because we do so many things and use so much language with just commonplace just because like something somewhere from a white man has been built that way. But but it personally does not make sense to us. And it's only going to change if we decide to start calling things roll castles.
Listen, at first you're weird. And then, it splinters out to like your friends who don't have kids, referring to them outside where you're not even there, referring to it as a roll castle. So it does have power if you like want to physically change something and in your circle you can successfully do that. I mean, what is more important than what something is called in your circle? There is not a single person in my family that would be like, what do you mean by roll castle? And when that is all echoed back to me, it's the greatest version of an echo chamber, right? Because like
Mhm.
it's the change that we want to see echoed back at us by all the people closest to us. And so yeah, some of these things that are in place that don't make any sense to us, that we say, like, you know what? Yeah, if I was designing this today, this would not look like this. They sometimes don't seem changeable, but they very, very much are. And before you know it, everybody's calling it a roll castle. So,
You know what?
what are we
Everyone's
changing this week?
changing. Yeah, and everyone's changing the language around how we talk about things. And really, that's the most important part. But it's so hard to identify something that is problematic language and then figure out alternative language to not only describe it but feel it. And I think that's where like a lot of the challenge has come for me when I realize there is a problem, it's a societal problem, or usually I recognize it either within myself or in my friend groups or like just language that's being used, and I say like that doesn't feel right for me, that feels problematic, and like why does that feel problematic, and like why are we talking about it in this way? And a couple weeks ago we did an episode, it's called Sorry Not Sorry, so if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen. But we talked about women apologizing so frequently and the threshold for women who what they feel it deserves an apology is so much lower than that of our counterparts, which are, unfortunately are men. um, but like thinking about the reasons why we don't do that and then coming up with alternative language surrounding that, but also recognizing that it is a really complex issue that has, not only like internally developed within us where we personally apologize all the time, which is the easiest place to recognize, but the reason behind why we do some of those things, the societal impacts that have created a system where we feel the need to apologize all the time, or where we feel the need to apologize for taking up space, or don't recognize that we can take up space and deserve to take up space in these areas. And as I started thinking about some of those things, aging has always come up, because it's something that happens no matter what. Time continues to move, and we have a lot of language surrounding aging, specifically for women, that is very problematic and really difficult to navigate when you start to think about aging for yourself, or like how we're going to talk about aging, or what we are glamorizing in a sense of age. And it's become how I want to talk about this is really like noticing how we talk about it with ourselves, and how we think about ourselves and our value, and also recognizing that there has been so many deep societal impacts that have structured how we think about that. And it's not that we can't change it, but recognizing that you don't have full ownership for how you have interpreted aging to this day, but we do have an ownership and a responsibility to adjust how we think about it, how we talk about it moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't come up with the name suitcase, but it stuck. And so, like, it doesn't mean that it was ever right, but it does mean that you have to recognize that there are years, there is a lifetime behind the meanings of some of these social concepts. And aging for women being one of the, I would say, one of the most ingrained social norms is that this is a negative thing and this is something to be fought against. And when we look at, how we're internalizing these messages that are coming from outside sources, and we look at the effects that they're having on our life, whether they be, positive or negative, when we really step back and say, okay, referring to the Sorry Not Sorry episode, when we really look back and say, I don't want to apologize that much. I think that's actually hurting my self-esteem. I can see what they're saying when they are highlighting the fact that I'm hearing all of these apologies and all of these excuses of, I'm just not as smart or whatever. And I'm internalizing those. And it's the same thing when it comes to concepts of age. And when we both had birthdays recently, and one of the things I remember, I had this like birthday pedicure scheduled, and I was sitting in the chair, and I got this group call from my mom and both of my sisters, and it was just so like nice, and I was so excited. And when I picked up, I was like, one of the most common questions that people ask you, like on your birthday, how does it feel to be? And I realized when my son had his birthday, which is he's also in February, the first thing I said to him when we woke up, how does it feel to be 6? Like this is just like a thing that we do. Like it's just a societal thing. How does it feel? So when my sisters and my mom asked me, how does it feel to be, 38? I have said things in the past that I thought were appropriate. I'm just getting old. I can't believe it. And I actually made a point in my mind this year to change the dialogue surrounding that. And I was so much pleased with my answer this year, so much more pleased than I have been in past years. Do you remember what I said when you guys asked me?
Mm-mm.
I said, they said, how do you feel to be 38? And I said, I feel so lucky.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel so lucky that so many people do not get the opportunity to be 38. And I feel incredibly lucky at all of the things that I have surrounding me, all the love that I have surrounding me, that I have built up in 38 years of living. It is the most love, because the more years you have to build up your life, essentially the better it is. And the more people you have had the opportunity to meet and have surrounding you that are having these unbelievably positive impacts. And that is genuinely, when I sat back and thought about my previous answers of, I feel so old, my God, I need Botox, I'm so tired, like those were all not true.
Mm.
Saying those things because I felt like that was the expected answer. And when I
Yeah.
really sat back and thought about my truth was this year's answer. I feel so lucky. It felt so much truer and more honest to be saying that answer. And I just saw all your faces and you guys all lit up. Like I said the right answer to the question for the first time ever. And I saw like all your faces with like the possibilities of like, maybe that is the answer we've all been looking for all these years, is like, I feel so lucky to have gotten here. And from now on, that will be my answer.
Mm.
And because that is genuinely my truth. And just the thought of that kind of resonating in my small social circle of just you guys. And maybe next year Isley says that. And maybe next
Mm.
year, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I really I mean, I obviously loved the answer because I think that that is something that we all fall victim to, is answering in the way that we've heard or that we think it is the way that we're supposed to answer, and the way, and that translates into the way that we're supposed to think about aging. And Rachel and I's birthdays are 4 days apart, and 4 days and 4 years, but 4 days apart. And I had a similar experience on my birthday, but like I burst into tears at the question. And I was wondering why I had felt so attacked by, like, and it was posed in a very like different way. It was like, oh, you look older. Like, how do you feel? And I was just like so put off by it. And then it got me thinking of like, why is it that I feel so attacked by that? And what are the thoughts around that? What does that mean to me? And like, how does that align with my truth? And the difference there with the like, what are you supposed to be doing? How are you supposed to be feeling? Like, oh, you're older, and it having a negative connotation to it. That was all built around things that I didn't actually believe, that didn't actually align with how I felt. Because when I go back to my truth and I think about being in my 20s, or like, at a younger self, like, I don't want to go back and be her at all. Like, she did not know all of the things that I know now. She has not experienced all of the things that I have experienced. And she was really not living in all of the power that I feel every day, that I could only come to with time. Like, it wasn't just like a circumstantial thing. It was like that could only come with time and experience and going through different things to be able to really like sink and live into my truth, which is ultimately like what we want to be doing. And I can only imagine with some more time what that will do, like the possibilities. And I think I've never thought about aging with possibilities before because it hasn't been presented to me in that way. It's been presented in a way that, like, I think it's really important to say that society is particularly cruel to aging women. It is so cruel in a way of a decrease in value without the possibility of an increase, which is very different from men. Because when you think about, the language, the small language that we use around that, where like, men get gray hair and they're like the silver fox. And like, what's the equivalent to like a crazy cat lady that like is like old, the cat lady lives with just cats? Like, is it a bachelor? Because like, what's the equivalent there? Because our language is very specific around how we frame things for women, dad bods versus mom bods. And we're like, wait a minute, there's only one of us that have had to bear the physical burden of bearing children. So why is it that we have one that is kind of like glamorized and the other one that is shamed? It's like, it's a real weird thing. And it is very, And I do want to say, I feel like it is very calculated on a structural sense to make sure that women don't know the truth about aging with power, because it's
I
very important that they don't know that.
I couldn't agree more. And some of these things, when you are looking at unearthing like the truth, you really have to, in my opinion, you really have to find out what are those normal, those things that have been brought to your life as normal. It's a suitcase your whole entire life. What are those things, and identify them? And I think that when you identify that the goal or the structure surrounding women aging right now is a decrease in value, when you unearth that and you call it what it is and you say it out loud, just then I think is when you can start and say, you know what, hold the phone. But before you identify that, it's hard to put your finger on like what it is that you're like trying to change. Like, what am I trying to tell myself that like wrinkles are sexy and attractive? Well, I don't believe that. So like, okay, am I trying to tell myself like, oh, my body looks better than it did in the 20s? Like, no, I don't believe that. And it's like, when you have a physical thing to sort of look at and say, this is it, this is what the norm is trying to do. It's trying to tell me that as I age, I get less valuable. And that brings you to your point of value is solely based on my appearance. And the appearance of aging for women is somehow not as sexy or not as sought after as the appearance of aging in men. And when you call attention to that, I think that's when you can start to make actual changes in your mindset.
Yeah. I mean, Sarah Jessica Parker had talked about this one time too, when she said like she had let her hair go gray, and a lot of people were, taking pictures and coming at her for it. And she said like, well, that's weird. Like Jay Leno, like she's like rattling off all of these men who have been in a similar position who have gone gray, and no one has said a single thing about it. But it just highlights the difference of how we treat women in accepting aging. And the reason why there was so much, attention to that is because anytime someone is accepting of the thing that society doesn't want you to be accepting of, it is it's a red flag to the whole structure, right? As soon as women started saying like, no, regardless of my body size, I'm sexy, I'm beautiful, I'm happy in my own skin, it was somehow an attack. Well, it was an attack on what we want the ideal in Air Bunnies, the ideal body to look like. That's an attack on that. So we have to make sure that we tear that down, because as soon as women start accepting themselves in their body, in their age, in their skin, and not placing their entire worth value on what they look like, and if it is aesthetically pleasing from a societal standpoint, then it's a dangerous game.
Oh
And
boy.
that was kind of like where I came to when I was really thinking about this subject, and thinking about like, well, that's the end game, is to make me believe that I am somehow decreasing in value, when my truth says to me in my heart, I am increasing in value. That's what I actually believe, because I know that the things that I'm acquiring are important to me, and they align with my value system. Those are the things that align with my value system. I'm becoming a better person. I'm becoming more kind. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of love to give. I have a lot to give to the people around me in my relationships, and to myself. So those things are things that I hold in high value, and I hold them at a higher value than my physical appearance. So therefore, I am only gaining value with those experiences, and the more that I continue to grow and come into the person that I want to be, that has nothing to do with my physical appearance.
That's freaking, is that, I don't know. If that's not powerful, I don't know what it's about. What is life about if that's not what everything is surrounded on? I mean, I think about the things, the impact and the things that I had to give as a 20-year-old woman, a 25-year-old woman, a 30-year-old woman. And I'm like, I just didn't have as much to give it. And it wasn't, there's nothing about her fault. That's a child. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I didn't have the life experience. I didn't have the, and to think that I will look back in 10 or 20 years and say, oh man, that 38-year-old woman she just didn't have as much to give. She just didn't know what I know now. Like, it makes it almost exciting. And I get, the thing you said about the gray hair really resonated with me, because not only um, was the implication like Sarah Jessica Parker had let herself go, but the men that she highlighted is like, hey, how come they didn't let themselves go? They actually encourage men in powerful positions that need to be taken seriously, such as politicians, nightly news anchors. They encourage them to let their selves go, salt and pepper and gray and whatever. And I've even heard that some men in politics and in those career fields have actually put fake gray in the front of their hair to be taken more seriously because they are wiser with that aesthetic. And people trust them more and they look like they have more experience. Imagine if those societal norms were actually spread evenly among the genders. Women who had the physical appearance of age would be taken more seriously. Now, we look at the other end of the spectrum. We look at women politicians. Almost none have their natural hair. It's always dyed hair. We have, I mean, an immense amounts of makeup to sort of like, hide this or that or whatever signs of aging. That would be the worst thing a woman politician could look, would be old, right? She just wants to look younger. The If we just spread that across and all of a sudden those same characteristics made women look more wise and more
Therefore, more
valuable,
powerful.
like, you're right. It's gonna shake things up. If women know their value and they feel it more year after year after year, and they continue to gain strength and confidence, that shakes things up a bit. And sometimes what has been is the more comfortable route, but not for the people that are not gaining from
Mhm.
that comfortable route. And in fact, who are having, an immense amount of self loathing due to the fact that we're not stopping this. It is
Mhm.
not something you can stop. We've been asked to stop the inevitable. And that is just like one of the many unrealistic expectations that are set on women, that we will never be able to reach this bar.
It doesn't end with stop time.
It's on purpose that we're never able to reach the bar. Because if we're never able to reach the bar, then we never can truly find the power within us. And if you're not questioning that, well,
Well,
I will
that's
for you.
why I know I will for you, and we'll talk it out, because it just is one of those things where, like, it is trickled into everything that we're doing, what we expect of ourselves, how we hold ourselves, how we carry ourselves, and where we place our worth. And where we place our worth has to be strategic. We can't just say, well, you can't just be passive in how you place your worth, because society will tell you the wrong things. So the messages that you're getting are wrong. So I think that's why it has to be so calculated and so strategic. And you really have to think it through and give it the time and the emotional and effort that it deserves, because every message is the wrong one. So the ones that are coming at you say place your worth in your body, and like when you go to take health into, your top priority, that's the first thing that you're hit with. Put your worth in your weight. And it's like, no, that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer right there. Put your worth in your aesthetic. How small can you get? You know what I mean? Like, it always is giving you the wrong answer. And like, when we sit back and we think about it and we say, okay, I'm going to be strategic about the things that I value and what worth looks like to me. What do I bring to the table and what do I want to increase and what do I want to put effort into? And we can structure our habits and our life around that because it is very strategic and it is very purposeful. I would like to put effort into becoming a healthier person. Now, health to me looks like my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, my relationships. Those things are very important to me. So once you have identified what those are, now that worth had nothing to do with my physical appearance. So I'm going to take that right off the table because I've already eliminated the things that are important to me. So then when I structure my habits and my day to day and what I'm going to focus around that, it looks to align with those things. And then we just slowly start to build up these things that are actually our values, that are actually the people that we want to be. And we're affected less by the messages from society that want to interrupt that. The more we give them a stronghold, the more we identify them and say, no, every day I live my life to be a person who impacts change, who has a positive impact on the people around me, on society around me, on the people, there's like the interpersonal relationships. Like that's something I value and I practice it every day. So when it comes down to like, well, you're getting older, so you must have less value. And it's like, no, the thing that I say to myself every day and the thing I practice every day contradicts that. So I'm going to reject that.
It's so much harder to not be able to just go to the default. You
Yep.
know what I mean? It really is obviously the easiest road would be whatever the default is, I'll just go back to that. And it's not a ton of work. And every single day I have to be, but it reminds me of what we were talking about with last week with our guest, Holly Baxter, which was, her advice to be intentional with every single thing when you're speaking about your journey and your body and your health. It's like these things have to be intentional. They are things that you have to work on every single day. And it is hard work and it is going to be a lifelong journey, but it's so worth it. Because if you just fall to the default of, I need to be skinnier because that's what someone said, or I need to be younger because that's what someone said, it is a life built by somebody else's values. And I just can't live like that. I just can't. I'd rather do all the work, to be honest, even though it's a ton of work, to live my values. And I really do think that when we think about age, we have to use the same intentional thinking of, I'm not going to the default. I am creating my own version of what the benefits of aging are, and I'm going to live that truth. And when you can start down that road, I want to say that that answer for me felt so much better this year.
Mm.
And I'm going to use it every year. And I just think it's such a mindset shift to be able to, I don't care that I'm supposed to be feeling bad about another trip around the sun because I'm not. And F you. I was going to say the other thing, but
Well, it's those small changes like that. And not changing your answers to some of those questions and even changing your responses to a lot of people who are still practiced in the common response of like, oh, I'm so old, or like talking about it in a way that they've been taught to, and it's just common language, and it's totally okay. Because I find myself like sitting there during some of those and being like, oh man, there's a better way. I'm not sure how to address that yet, but like we saying responses, like taking away the responses of like, well, you're still young. Like, no, like I don't need you to make me feel better because I'm not feeling bad already. So reel that back in. But like it's just small things like that. And I'm so glad you did answer it that way because it opens up the door to be able to, for many other people, think about what their answer might be and what their truth might be. Because it'll be
I
different for everyone. Like,
It'll be
what is your
different.
truth?
Well, that's the beauty of it, is like that's the beauty of it. And like everybody's reason for why they will have gained value as they've aged will be different. And it'll be like it's so cool to think of all of the different responses that you can have that don't have anything to do with
That are real.
your wrinkles.
Yeah.
I mean, will you finish by reading the last sentence of your post? Because it was just so good. Do you want me to read it for you? Do you feel weird reading your own words? Sophie had
Yeah.
this awesome post on Instagram about aging, and it was really it's like what this episode is based on. And I just wanted to like read her like closing sentence because I thought it was great. She said, "Don't be fooled by the bullshit. You improve with knowledge, power, strength in the years every single year you gain. So here's to another trip around the sun, you powerful bitches." So if you are loving this and you want to talk more about all of the strength and power and knowledge that you've gained as you've aged and how powerful it has made you, get into our app and share all of the things that have made you the amazing person you are today. And we are so excited to hear from you.
We're so excited to hear from you. We love you guys.